The massive space station Nexus Prime hung in the darkness like a glowing city. Ships from 12 different worlds docked at its many ports. Today was the big military show. Every important species in the galaxy had sent their best warships to display their power. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the USS Defiance. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the alien vessels perform their demonstrations. The Zalarian ships moved like silver dancers through space. Their hulls gleamed with a mirror finish that seemed to bend light around them. Energy. Shields flickered in beautiful colors around each vessel. "Look at those primitive humans," came a voice from behind Jake. He turned to see Lord Vex, the Zalarian fleet commander. The tall alien's skin had a blue tint, and his 4 arms gestured dismissively toward the human ship. "Their vessel looks like it was built in a scrapyard." Other alien delegates gathered around, their various forms creating a circle of mockery. The Alterian ambassador, a creature that looked like a walking crystal, made clicking sounds that Jake knew meant laughter. The Nexus representatives, with their tentacled heads, swayed in what passed for amusement among their kind. "Such thick armor plating," Lord Vex continued, his voice carrying across the deck. "Do they still use physical materials for protection?" How backward. Jake said nothing. He had heard it all before. The USS Defiance did look different from the sleek alien ships. Where their vessels were smooth and elegant, his ship had visible weapon ports, thick metal plating, and a design that screamed function over form. The human warship was built like a fortress, heavy and solid. Captain Lisa Kane joined Jake at the viewing window. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform was standard navy blue without any fancy decorations. She was young for a ship captain, only 35, but her eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had seen real combat. "They are really enjoying themselves," she said quietly, watching the aliens point and whisper about their ship. "Let them laugh," Jake replied. "Words never won a battle." On the main display screen, the Zalarian flagship began its demonstration. The beautiful ship fired streams of pure energy that hit target drones with perfect accuracy. The plasma beams turned the metal targets into glowing gas in seconds. The crowd of delegates applauded with whatever appendages their species used for clapping. Next came the Alterian vessel. It moved without any visible engines, floating through space like magic. Its crystal hull focused starlight into deadly laser beams that could cut through asteroids. The precision was amazing to watch. The Nexus ship demonstrated something even more impressive. It fired what looked like small suns. These energy balls expanded and consumed everything they touched, leaving nothing behind. The weapon could destroy entire planets if needed. "Now for the human display," announced the station commander over the speakers. His voice carried a hint of amusement that made Jake's jaw tighten. Captain Kane activated her ship's communication system. "Defiance to Nexus Prime Control. Beginning demonstration." The USS Defiance moved away from the station with visible thruster flames. Unlike the silent alien ships, everyone could hear and feel the human engines working. The ship turned toward the target area with mechanical precision, not the flowing grace of the other vessels. "What are those things sticking out of their hull?" asked a delegate from the Corvan Empire. The lizard-like creature pointed with a clawed finger at the human ship. "Missile tubes," Lord Vex answered with disgust. "They still use explosive projectiles. Can you imagine anything so crude?" The human ship reached the firing position. A series of bright flashes erupted from various points along its hull. Instead of energy beams, physical objects shot toward the targets. The missiles left trails of fire as they flew through space. When they hit, the explosions were impressive but seemed primitive compared to the clean energy weapons of the other ships. Chunks of metal and debris flew in all directions. It was messy and violent. "Barbaric," whispered the Alterian ambassador. "They destroy things with brute force instead of elegant energy manipulation." Jake watched his ship perform its demonstration. The Defiance fired its railguns next. These weapons used magnetic fields to shoot metal slugs at incredible speeds. The projectiles hit with enormous force, smashing targets into pieces rather than vaporizing them cleanly. The alien delegates shook their heads or performed whatever gesture their species used to show disapproval. To them, the human weapons seemed like tools from the Stone Age compared to their advanced energy systems. Captain Kane's voice came over the speakers again. "Demonstration complete. Defiance returning to dock." As the human ship approached the station, Lord Vex addressed the crowd. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," he began with theatrical flair, "we have just witnessed the full range of military capability in our galaxy. From the sublime perfection of energy manipulation to the crude hammer blows of primitive projectiles." Laughter rippled through the assembled delegates. The Corvan representative made a hissing sound that passed for amusement among his people. Even the normally serious Nexus ambassadors seemed entertained. "I wonder," Lord Vex continued, "why the humans were even invited to this demonstration. Their technology is hundreds of years behind ours. In a real conflict, how long would such a vessel survive?" "About 30 seconds," called out another voice. More laughter followed. Jake felt his hands clench into fists, but he kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Captain Kane showed no reaction to the insults. She had learned long ago that responding to mockery only made it worse. The Defiance settled into its docking clamp with a noticeable thud. The alien ships had docked silently using their advanced field generators. Everything about the human vessel seemed crude and outdated compared to the technological marvels surrounding it. "Perhaps," Lord Vex said with a smirk, "the humans should consider purchasing real warships from a civilized species. We Zalarians would be happy to sell them some of our older models. Surely even those would be an improvement." This comment brought the loudest laughter yet. Several delegates actually applauded the insult. Jake and Captain Kane exchanged a glance, but remained silent. As the demonstration ended and the delegates began to leave, Jake heard fragments of their conversations. Words like primitive, backward, and embarrassing drifted through the air. Some aliens wondered why humanity had been admitted to the Galactic Council at all. Captain Kane finally spoke. "Admiral, permission to return to the ship?" "Granted," Jake replied. "And Captain, make sure the crew is ready. Something tells me we will have a chance to show these beings what human engineering can really do." As they walked toward the docking bay, neither of them noticed the urgent message arriving at the station's communication center. War was coming, and very soon everyone would learn the difference between looking advanced and being effective in actual combat. The emergency alarm echoed through Nexus Prime at 3 in the morning. Admiral Jake Morrison was pulled from sleep by the urgent sound. He dressed quickly and rushed to the command center, where Captain Lisa Kane was already studying incoming reports. "What is the situation?" Jake asked, still buttoning his uniform jacket. "The Keth Empire has attacked the outer colonies," Lisa replied, her face grim. "They hit 5 human settlements and 3 Alterian outposts simultaneously. No warning, no declaration of war." Jake studied the tactical display. Red marks showed the locations of destroyed colonies. The Keth had struck fast and hard, leaving no survivors. These were not military targets, but civilian populations. families, children. "Farmers and traders, how many ships?" he asked. "Intelligence reports at least 500 Keth vessels moving toward the Omega Nebula," came the answer from Commander Ryan Davis, the Defiance's tactical officer. Ryan was a tall man with steady hands and sharp eyes. He had joined the crew 2 years ago after serving on the frontier patrol ships. The command center filled with alien delegates as news of the attack spread. Lord Vex arrived wearing an elaborate ceremonial robe that showed his high rank among the Zalarians. The Altarian ambassador floated in, using his species' natural ability to hover above the ground. "This is an act of war against the entire Galactic Council," declared the Nexus Prime Station commander. His tentacles writhed with anger as he spoke. "The Keth have broken every treaty and law of civilized warfare." "We must respond with overwhelming force," Lord Vex announced. "My fleet of 40 ships stands ready to teach these barbarians a lesson." Other commanders voiced their agreement. The Altarians offered 30 vessels with their advanced crystal energy weapons. The Nexus fleet contributed 50 ships equipped with their planet-destroying energy balls. In total, the combined Council fleet numbered 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. "And what of the human contribution?" asked the Corvan representative, his reptilian eyes glinting, with what might have been amusement. "Will they be sending their museum piece to join our forces?" Jake stepped forward. "The USS Defiance will participate in any Council military action." The room fell silent for a moment before scattered laughter began. Several delegates whispered among themselves, and Jake caught words like suicide and pointless sacrifice. "Admiral Morrison," Lord Vex said with false concern, "perhaps the humans should remain in a support role. Your ship could carry supplies or evacuate wounded. Leave the actual fighting to vessels designed for modern warfare." "We appreciate the offer," Jake replied evenly, "but humanity will carry its weight in this conflict." More whispers filled the room. The alien commanders clearly thought the humans were making a mistake. Their primitive ship would be destroyed in the first few minutes of battle against the advanced Keth fleet. Captain Kane spoke up from her position near the tactical display. "Sir, we should prepare the Defiance for immediate departure." "Agreed," Jake nodded. "How long until we can be ready for combat operations?" 6 hours, she replied. "Chief Engineer Ben Parker is already running full diagnostics on all systems." Ben Parker was a short, stocky man who knew every bolt and wire on the Defiance. He had served on human ships for 20 years and could make repairs with spare parts and determination when fancy alien technology failed. The Corvan representative made his species' version of a chuckle. 6 hours? Our ships are ready now. We do not need lengthy preparation time for simple operations." "Different ships, different procedures," Jake said calmly. The fleet commanders gathered around the main strategic display to plan their attack. The Keth Armada was heading for the Omega Nebula, a region of space filled with gas clouds and electromagnetic interference. It was a natural choke point that controlled access to 3 major trade routes. "We will meet them at the nebula's edge," Lord Vex declared, pointing at the display with one of his 4 arms. "Our combined energy weapons will destroy them before they can establish defensive positions." The Altarian commander agreed. "Our crystal ships can focus starlight even in the nebula's interference. The Keth will not expect such capability." Plans took shape quickly. The Council fleet would approach in 3 waves. The Zalarian ships would attack first with their plasma weapons. The Altarian vessels would follow, using their precision lasers to target specific enemy ships. The Nexus fleet would finish with their planet-killer energy balls. "Where do you want the human ship?" asked the tactical coordinator, a multi-armed being from the Spiral Confederation. The commanders looked at each other uncertainly. No one seemed to know what to do with the primitive human vessel. Perhaps in the rear, suggested Lord Vex. They could observe and learn how real space combat is conducted. Or they could stay here, added the Corvin representative. Someone should guard the station while we are away. Jake felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. The Defiance will take whatever position serves the fleet best. Very well, Lord Vex said dismissively. You may follow behind the main battle line. Try not to get in our way. The meeting broke up as commanders returned to their ships. Jake and Lisa walked back to the Defiance in silence. The docking bay was busy with activity as the alien fleets prepared for departure. Sleek ships powered up their energy systems, creating an impressive light show. On board the Defiance, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Amy Foster checked the weapons systems at her station. She was young but had trained extensively, with every gun and missile on the ship. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panels as she ran diagnostics on each weapon. "How are we looking, Lieutenant?" Captain Kane asked. "All weapon systems are functional," Amy reported. "Kinetic cannons loaded and ready, missile tubes armed, railguns charged." In the engineering section, Chief Parker supervised his team as they checked the ship's power systems. The Defiance used nuclear reactors instead of the exotic energy sources favored by alien ships. The technology was older but proven reliable in countless battles. "How long since our last major overhaul?" Lisa asked. 8 months, Parker replied, wiping grease from his hands. "She is not pretty, but every system works exactly as designed." Commander Davis studied the tactical situation from his station. The Keth fleet was massive, 500 ships against the Council's 200. The enemy had numbers, but the Council had superior technology. At least that was what everyone believed. "Sir," Davis reported, "the alien commanders are already making victory speeches to their crews. They seem very confident." Through the ship's communication system, they could hear fragments of broadcasts from other vessels. Lord Vex was telling his crew that the battle would be over in hours. The Alterian commander promised his people a glorious victory using their advanced weapons. "What about our crew?" Jake asked Captain Kane. "Ready for whatever comes," she replied. "They know the other ships consider us a joke, but they also know this crew has never backed down from a fight." The Defiance was the oldest ship in the fleet by almost 50 years. Its weapons were simple compared to the energy systems on alien vessels. Its armor was thick metal instead of energy shields. Its engines burned chemical fuel rather than manipulating exotic matter, but the crew believed in their ship and each other. They had trained together for years, learning to work as a single unit. When aliens saw primitive weapons, the humans saw reliable tools that had won battles for generations. "All ships," came the fleet commander's voice over the communication system, "prepare for departure. We depart for the Omega Nebula in 1 hour." Jake looked around the bridge of his ship. These people were about to face an enemy that outnumbered them more than 2 to 1. The other fleet commanders expected the humans to hide in the back and watch real warriors fight. "Captain Kane," he said formally, "bring the ship to battle readiness. We are going to show the galaxy what human engineering can accomplish." The Omega Nebula stretched across space like a rainbow made of gas and stardust. Beautiful colors swirled in patterns that had existed for millions of years. But today, this peaceful region would become a battlefield. Captain Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the tactical display as both fleets moved into position. The Council ships approached in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and advanced technology. Behind them, looking almost embarrassed to be there, came the single human vessel. Enemy fleet detected, Commander Ryan Davis reported from his station. 512 Keth ships emerging from the nebula's far side. The Keth warships were dark and angular, built for intimidation as much as combat. Each vessel bristled with weapon ports and armor spikes. Their formation looked like a swarm of metal insects preparing to devour everything in their path. Open. Communications to all Council ships, ordered Fleet Commander Vex from his flagship. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. This is Lord Vex to all vessels. Today we face barbaric attackers who dare to challenge civilized space. Our advanced weapons will teach them the price of their aggression. Victory will be swift and complete. Cheers echoed from the alien ships. Their crews believed absolutely in their technological superiority. The Zalarian plasma cannons could melt asteroids. The Alterian crystal ships focused pure starlight into cutting beams. The Nexus energy weapons could destroy planets. Human. Vessel Defiance, came a message on a private channel. It was the Corvan fleet commander, his reptilian voice filled with dark amusement. My officers are taking bets on how long your ship will survive. The average guess is 90 seconds. Care to make a wager yourself? Captain Kane activated the reply button. We appreciate your concern, but we will be too busy fighting to place bets. Laughter came back through the communication system. Several alien voices could be heard making jokes about human stubbornness and pride. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet deploy. The Keth ships were spreading into attack formation, their dark hulls almost invisible against the nebulas. Colorful background. Intelligence reports said these vessels carried adaptive armor that could learn from enemy attacks. All Council ships, advance to attack position, Lord Vex commanded. Zalarian fleet will engage first. All other ships maintain formation and prepare to follow. The beautiful silver ships of the Zalarian fleet moved forward like a school of metal fish. Their energy shields created shimmering barriers around each vessel. Plasma cannons began charging with a low hum that could be felt through the hulls of nearby ships. First wave engaging enemy, came the tactical report. Streams of superheated plasma erupted from the Zalarian ships. The energy beams struck the lead Keth vessels with tremendous force. Several enemy ships exploded immediately, their hulls unable to withstand the intense heat. Direct hits confirmed, reported a Zalarian gunner. Enemy armor penetrated, continuing fire. For the first few minutes, everything went according to plan. The Council's advanced weapons tore through the Keth formation like hot knives through butter. Enemy ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their debris scattering into the nebula's gas clouds. But then something changed. Sir, called out an Alterian sensor operator, the enemy ships are adapting. Our plasma hits are becoming less effective. Lord Vex studied his tactical display with growing concern. The Keth vessels that survived the first attacks were showing increased resistance to further damage. Their hulls seemed to be learning from each hit, becoming stronger and more resistant. Impossible, he muttered. Armor cannot adapt that quickly. But the evidence was clear on every sensor screen. The Keth ships were taking multiple plasma hits that should have destroyed them. Instead, each subsequent attack did less damage than the one before. Second wave, advance and engage, Lord Vex ordered, trying to maintain his confidence. The Alterian crystal ships moved forward, their transparent hulls focusing starlight into deadly laser beams. These weapons were different from the plasma cannons, pure energy instead of superheated matter. Surely the Keth armor could not adapt to every type of attack. The crystal ships fired their focused starlight weapons. The beams struck enemy vessels with pinpoint accuracy, cutting through hulls like surgical instruments. Several more Keth ships were destroyed, their dark forms cracking apart under the precise assault. But again, the adaptation began. Within minutes, the surviving enemy ships showed increased resistance to the laser attacks. Their armor was learning, changing, becoming immune to every weapon the Council fleet could bring to bear. Third wave, engage with maximum firepower, Lord Vex commanded, his voice now showing the first hints of worry. The Nexus ships moved forward and unleashed their planet-killing energy balls. These weapons were the most powerful in the Council arsenal. Miniature suns that consumed everything they touched. The expanding energy spheres engulfed entire groups of Keth ships. For a moment, it looked like the tide had turned. Dozens of enemy vessels vanished into the bright explosions. But as the energy dissipated, many Keth ships emerged from the blasts, their hulls scarred but intact. "How is this possible?" demanded the Altarian commander. "Their armor is adapting faster than our computers can calculate." Commander Davis watched the battle from the Defiance's bridge. His tactical screens showed the impossible truth. The Council's most advanced weapons were becoming useless. Each attack taught the enemy how to defend against the next one. "Captain," he reported quietly, "the alien fleet is in trouble. Their energy weapons are losing effectiveness with each shot." Captain Kane studied the battle display. The beautiful formations of Council ships were breaking apart as their weapons failed to destroy the enemy. Panic was beginning to spread through the alien crews as their technological advantage disappeared. "Enemy fleet advancing," Davis continued. "They are moving to surround the Council ships." The Keth vessels pressed their attack. Their own weapons, crude but effective energy cannons, began tearing into the Council fleet. The first Zalarian ship to die was Lord Vex's own flagship, its elegant silver hull cracked open like an egg, spilling atmosphere and crew into space. "All ships retreat," came the panicked order from the surviving Zalarian commander. "Our weapons are ineffective. We cannot win this engagement." But retreat was not possible. The Keth fleet had surrounded the Council forces, trapping them in a deadly circle. One by one, the advanced alien warships were destroyed by their primitive enemies. The Altarian crystal ships tried to use their superior speed to escape, but the Keth had anticipated this. Dark enemy vessels appeared from behind asteroid clusters, cutting off every escape route. "This is impossible," transmitted the Corvin commander before his ship exploded in a ball of fire. "Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs." Admiral Morrison watched the slaughter from his position at the rear of the formation. The most advanced fleet in galactic history was being destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as backward savages. "Sir," Captain Kane said quietly, "we are the only ship not yet engaged." "Orders?" Jake looked at the tactical display. Nearly half the Council fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The surviving ships were falling back in disorder, their crews too shocked to fight effectively. The USS Defiance sat alone at the edge of the battle, ignored by both sides. The Keth probably considered it too insignificant to bother with. The Council ships were too busy dying to remember the primitive human vessel was even there. "Captain Kane," Admiral Morrison said calmly, "bring us about. It is time to see if old-fashioned human engineering can succeed where advanced technology has failed." "All hands, battle stations," Captain Kane announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. We are going to engage the enemy." Lieutenant Amy Foster's hands moved to her weapons controls. The kinetic cannons, missile tubes, and railguns that the aliens had mocked were about to get their chance to prove their worth. Chief Engineer Ben Parker reported from the engine room. "All systems ready, Captain. Nuclear reactors at full power." The USS Defiance turned toward the enemy fleet, its bulk armor and primitive weapons facing odds that would have terrified any sane commander. But Jake Morrison had spent 30 years learning that in war, the side with the most advanced technology did not always win. "Engage the enemy," he ordered. The USS Defiance moved through the chaotic battlefield like a metal mountain. Around them, the beautiful ships of the Galactic Council burned and exploded as the Keth fleet pressed their attack. But the old human warship had not fired a single shot yet. Captain Lisa Kane stood at her command station, watching the tactical display with careful eyes. The enemy ships were focused on finishing off the retreating Council vessels. None of them had noticed the primitive human ship moving into attack position. "Lieutenant Foster," she called out, "what is the status of our weapons?" Amy Foster looked up from her control panel, her young face serious with concentration. "All kinetic systems are loaded and ready, Captain. Explosive shells in the main cannons, high-velocity rounds in the railguns, nuclear missiles armed and targeted." Behind them, Chief Engineer Ben Parker's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, all reactors are running at full power. We have enough energy to fight for 12 hours straight if needed." Commander Ryan Davis studied his sensor readings with growing interest. "Captain, I am detecting something unusual about the enemy ships. Their adaptive armor seems designed specifically for energy weapons." "Explain," Kane ordered. "The Keth hulls are covered with some kind of smart material that learns from energy attacks. Each plasma blast or laser hit teaches it how to defend against the next one. But I do not see any adaptation to physical impacts." Captain Kane felt a cold smile cross her face. "You mean they have prepared for advanced energy weapons, but not for old-fashioned bullets and bombs?" "Exactly," Davis confirmed. "Their armor might be completely vulnerable to kinetic impacts." Admiral Jake Morrison had been listening to the conversation from his position near the tactical display. "Captain, bring us in close to the enemy formation. Let us see how they handle weapons they have never encountered before." The Defiance accelerated toward the nearest group of Keth ships. These vessels were dark and angular, their hulls covered with the adaptive armor that had made them immune to the Council's energy weapons. They moved with confidence, believing themselves invincible. "Enemy ships have noticed our approach," Davis reported. "3 vessels turning to intercept." "Good," Admiral Morrison replied. "Lieutenant Foster, prepare to fire kinetic cannons on my command." The Keth ships opened fire first. Energy beams lanced out toward the human vessel, the same weapons that had destroyed dozens of Council ships. The aliens expected to see another enemy vessel vaporized in seconds. Instead, the energy blasts struck the Defiance's thick armor plating and scattered harmlessly. The human ship's hull was built from layered metal designed to absorb and disperse energy attacks. Where alien ships relied on shields, humans used good old-fashioned armor. "No damage reported," came Chief Parker's voice. From engineering, "Hull integrity at 100%. The Keth ships fired again, pouring more energy into their attacks. But the results were the same. The human ship continued its approach, seemingly immune to weapons that had terrorized the galaxy. "Now they are confused," Captain Kane observed, watching the enemy vessel's erratic movements. "Fire kinetic cannons!" Lieutenant Foster pressed the firing controls. The USS Defiance shuddered as its main guns spoke. But instead of energy beams, solid projectiles shot through space at tremendous speed. The explosive shells struck the first Keth ship like hammers hitting glass. The adaptive armor, designed to deflect energy, offered no protection against physical impacts. The shells punched through the hull and exploded inside, tearing the enemy vessel apart from within. "Direct hit," Foster reported with satisfaction. "Target destroyed." The second Keth ship tried to evade, but the human gunner was ready. Another salvo of kinetic shells found their mark. The enemy vessel broke apart in a shower of debris, its advanced armor useless against primitive explosives. "Impossible," came a transmission from the third Keth ship. "How are you penetrating our defenses?" Captain Kane activated the communication system. "With weapons your armor was never designed to stop." The USS Defiance's railguns fired next. These weapons used magnetic fields to accelerate metal slugs to incredible velocities. The projectiles hit the third Keth ship with the force of meteors, punching clean through the hull and out the other side. 3 enemy ships destroyed, Commander, Davis reported. "The rest of their fleet is taking notice." Indeed, the entire Keth Armada was turning toward the human ship. For the first time in the battle, their enemy was not only fighting back, but winning. Ships that had seemed invincible were being destroyed by weapons they had never encountered. "Incoming missiles," Davis warned, as the Keth fleet launched a massive attack. Hundreds of enemy projectiles streaked toward the Defiance. But these were energy-based weapons, designed to overwhelm shields and vaporize hulls. Against the human ship's thick armor, they were far less effective. "Minor hull damage on Deck 7, reported a damage control team. "Sealing hull breach now." The Defiance fired its own missiles in response. These were not energy weapons, but nuclear warheads. Fusion bombs wrapped in metal casings. The alien ship's adaptive armor could not learn fast enough to defend against the massive explosions. "Nuclear detonations confirmed," Foster announced. 4 enemy ships destroyed, 6 more damaged. The Keth fleet began to spread out, trying to use their superior numbers to surround the single human ship. But the Defiance had advantages they did not expect. Its weapons were designed for exactly this kind of fight. "Multiple missile launch," ordered Captain Kane. The human ship's missile tubes opened, releasing dozens of nuclear warheads. Unlike the precise energy weapons of the Council fleet, these were area effect weapons. They did not need to hit specific targets to cause damage. The nuclear explosions lit up the nebula like artificial suns. Enemy ships caught in the blasts were either destroyed outright or crippled by the electromagnetic pulses. The Keth formation began to break apart as commanders tried to avoid the expanding fireballs. "Enemy fleet is scattering," Davis reported. "They are trying to regroup at a safer distance." But the Defiance was not finished. Chief Parker had been monitoring the battle from engineering, and he had noticed something interesting about the nebula itself. "Captain," his voice came through the communication system, "the gas clouds in this nebula are interfering with the enemy's energy weapons, but they do not affect our kinetic systems at all." "Explain," Admiral Morrison demanded. "The electromagnetic fields in the nebula disrupt energy flow," Parker continued. "That is why the Council ships had trouble with their plasma cannons and laser weapons, but our bullets and bombs are not affected." Captain Kane realized what this meant. "We have a significant advantage in this environment. Their most powerful weapons are weakened while ours work at full efficiency." The human ship pressed its attack, moving deeper into the Keth formation. The enemy vessels tried to concentrate their fire, but the nebula's interference reduced the effectiveness of their energy weapons. Meanwhile, the Defiance's kinetic systems worked perfectly. Navigator Julie Brooks had been plotting courses through the gas clouds, looking for tactical advantages. She was a quiet woman who understood space better than most people understood their own homes. "Captain," she called out, "if we move through that dense gas cloud, we can approach the enemy command ship from their blind spot." "Do it," Kane ordered. The USS Defiance disappeared into the colorful gas clouds of the nebula. The Keth sensors, designed to track energy signatures, lost contact with the primitive human ship. It was like trying to find a submarine in an ocean using tools designed to spot aircraft. When the Defiance emerged from the gas cloud, it was directly behind the largest Keth vessel. This ship was 3 times the size of the human warship and covered with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. "Target acquired," Lieutenant Foster announced. "All weapons ready." "Fire everything," Captain Kane ordered. The USS Defiance unleashed its full arsenal. Kinetic cannons, railguns, missile tubes, and even smaller defensive weapons all fired at once. The massive Keth ship, designed to withstand energy attacks, had no defense against the storm of physical projectiles. Explosive shells punched through the enemy hull. Railgun slugs tore through internal systems. Nuclear missiles detonated against the ship's superstructure. In less than 30 seconds, the pride of the Keth fleet was reduced to a drifting wreck. "Enemy command ship neutralized," Davis reported with amazement. "Remaining Keth vessels are breaking formation." The destruction of their flagship sent panic through the enemy fleet. These ships that had seemed invincible were being destroyed by weapons their adaptive armor could not counter. The tide of battle had turned completely. The destruction of the Keth command ship sent shock waves through both fleets. The surviving Council vessels, which had been retreating in panic just minutes before, stopped their flight to watch in amazement. The primitive human warship had just accomplished what their advanced energy weapons could not. Commander Ryan Davis coordinated the next phase of attack from his tactical station. His screens showed the Keth fleet breaking apart as individual ships tried to escape the human vessel that had appeared from nowhere to destroy their flagship. "Captain," he reported, "enemy formation is collapsing. They are scattering in all directions, but most are heading for the outer edge of the nebula." Captain Lisa Kane studied the tactical display with the eye of an experienced hunter. The Keth ships were fast, but they were also predictable. Fear made them choose the most obvious escape routes. "Navigator Brooks," she called out, "plot intercept. Courses for the 3 largest groups of enemy ships. We are going to cut them off before they can escape." Julie Brooks worked quickly at her station, her fingers dancing across the controls as she calculated trajectories and timing. "Course laid. In, Captain. We can intercept the first group in 7 minutes if we use maximum acceleration." "Chief Parker," Kane called down to engineering, "I need everything the reactors can give us." Ben Parker's voice came back immediately. "You have it, Captain. These old nuclear reactors may not be fancy, but they will run at full power all day, long without overheating." The USS Defiance turned toward the fleeing enemy ships with the ponderous grace of a metal mountain. Its chemical thrusters burned bright against the nebula's colorful backdrop, pushing the heavy vessel to maximum speed. Lieutenant Amy Foster prepared her weapons for the next engagement. The kinetic cannons were reloaded with high-explosive shells. The railguns were charged and ready. Most importantly, the missile tube still held enough nuclear warheads to level a small city. "First group of enemy ships in range," Commander Davis announced. These were smaller Keth vessels, built for speed rather than heavy combat. They had probably expected to pick off damaged Council ships during the cleanup phase of the battle. Instead, they found themselves being hunted by a predator they could not understand. "They are trying to jam our targeting systems," Foster reported, studying her weapon controls. "Let them try," Captain Kane replied with a cold smile. "Their jamming is designed for energy-based targeting systems. Our weapons use mechanical guidance and simple mathematics. The human weapons fired with their characteristic violence. Explosive. Shells crossed the space between ships in seconds, guided by basic ballistic computers that could not be jammed by electronic warfare. The first enemy ship tried to evade, but ran directly into the path of a railgun slug. The metal projectile, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the vessel from nose to tail. The ship came apart like a broken toy, spilling its contents into space. "Target destroyed," Foster announced. "Engaging second vessel." The Keth ships returned fire with their energy weapons, but the results were disappointing. The nebula's interference reduced their effectiveness while the Defiance's armor absorbed what little damage got through. Meanwhile, the human ship's nuclear missiles found their marks with devastating effect. Each warhead carried enough power to crack mountains, and the enemy ships had no defense against such primitive but effective weapons. "Second group of enemy ships detected," Davis called out. "Bearing 27 Mark 5, distance 12,000 kilometers. Navigator Brooks already had a course plotted. "Ready to intercept, Captain." The USS Defiance changed direction with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Every system worked exactly as designed, maintained by a crew that understood their ship, better than the aliens understood their own advanced technology. This group of enemy ships had learned from watching the first engagement. They stayed spread out to avoid being caught by nuclear explosions, and they tried to attack from multiple angles at once. "Smart," Admiral Jake Morrison observed from his position near the tactical display. "But not smart enough." Chief Engineer Parker had been monitoring the battle and had noticed something useful about the enemy tactics. His voice came over the communication system with barely contained excitement. "Captain, their ships are spreading out to avoid blast damage, but that makes them perfect targets for our railguns. They cannot dodge what they cannot see coming." The railguns were indeed the perfect weapon for this situation. Their projectiles traveled too fast for enemy sensors to track, and they carried enough kinetic energy to destroy any ship they hit. The scattered Keth formation actually made targeting easier. "All railguns fire at will," Captain Kane ordered. The magnetic weapons spoke in rapid sequence, sending metal slugs across space at tremendous velocity. The enemy ships, focused on avoiding missiles and explosive shells, had no defense against projectiles that arrived almost instantly. One by one, the Keth vessels were holed and destroyed. Their adaptive armor, so effective against energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper against solid metal traveling at relativistic speeds. "Third group is trying to reach the nebula's edge," Davis reported. "If they escape into open space, they could call for reinforcements." "Not acceptable," Admiral Morrison declared. "We end this here and now." The Defiance accelerated toward the final group of enemy ships. These were the survivors, the fastest and most experienced Keth vessels. They had seen what happened to their companions and were desperate to escape. But Julie Brooks had anticipated their route. The human navigator understood that fleeing ships would take the most direct path to safety, regardless of tactical considerations. "Intercept. Course locked in," she reported. "We will reach firing position in 4 minutes." The final engagement was the most intense yet. The surviving Keth ships knew they were fighting for their lives and threw everything they had at the human vessel. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and exotic particle weapons struck the Defiance from all directions. "Hull damage on multiple decks," reported a damage control team. But armor integrity is holding. The human ship's thick armor plating, scorned by the alien fleets as primitive, proved its worth. Layer after layer of metal absorbed and distributed the enemy fire, protecting the crew and vital systems inside. "Return fire," Captain Kane ordered calmly. The USS Defiance unleashed a coordinated barrage that demonstrated the brutal efficiency of human weapons design. Kinetic cannons targeted the largest ships, while railguns picked off smaller vessels. Nuclear missiles created expanding zones of destruction that no enemy could completely avoid. The battle lasted only minutes, but when the explosions faded, the Keth threat was eliminated. Debris from hundreds of enemy ships drifted through the nebula like metal snow. "All enemy contacts destroyed," Commander Davis reported with quiet satisfaction. "The Keth Armada has been neutralized." A stunned silence followed this announcement. The bridge crew looked at each other with expressions of amazement and pride. They had just achieved the impossible, a single ship destroying an entire enemy fleet. Captain Kane activated the general communication system. "This is Captain Kane. To all surviving Council ships, the enemy fleet has been destroyed. Repeat, all Keth vessels have been neutralized." Responses came back immediately from the scattered Council survivors. Voices in a dozen different languages expressed amazement, gratitude, and disbelief. The beautiful ships with their advanced technology had been saved by the ugly human vessel they had mocked just hours before. "How did you do it?" came a transmission from a damaged Zalarian cruiser. "Our weapons could barely scratch them." "With weapons that work," Captain Kane replied simply. Lord Vex's voice came through the communication system, transmitted from an escape pod since his flagship had been destroyed early in the battle. His tone carried a mixture of humility and wonder that had never been there before. "Human vessel Defiance, this is Lord Vex. I owe you an apology and my life. Your primitive weapons have accomplished what our advanced technology could not." Admiral Morrison took over the communication. "No apology needed, Lord Vex. We all learned something today about the difference between looking advanced and being effective." The USS Defiance began moving through the battlefield, checking for survivors and offering assistance to damaged ships. The crew worked with the same quiet efficiency they had shown in combat, proving that human competence extended beyond warfare. Chief Parker's damage control teams repaired the minor hull breaches caused by enemy fire. Lieutenant Foster secured her weapons and began the process of reloading for future battles. Navigator Brooks plotted a course home through the safest parts of the nebula. As they worked, messages began arriving from across the galaxy. News of the battle was spreading faster than light through the quantum communication networks. The story of the primitive human ship that had destroyed an entire enemy fleet was becoming legend even as it happened. But on the bridge of the USS Defiance, the crew remained focused on their duties. They had proven their worth in the most dramatic way possible, but they were still soldiers with a job to do. 3 hours after the battle ended, rescue ships began arriving at the Omega Nebula. The USS Defiance maintained its position among the debris field, coordinating rescue operations and providing assistance to damaged vessels. Dr. Helen Ward worked in the ship's medical bay, treating wounded crew members brought over from the surviving Council ships. She was a calm woman with steady hands who had served on human vessels for 15 years. Her simple medical equipment was proving more reliable than the advanced healing systems on alien ships. "How are our patients, Doctor?" Captain Lisa Kane asked during a brief visit to the medical section. "Stable," Helen replied, checking on a Zalarian officer with radiation burns. "The interesting thing is that their injuries are mostly from their own ship systems overloading." Our thick armor protected us from similar damage. The alien medical technology was certainly impressive to look at. Healing chambers that could mend bones with energy fields and surgical lasers that could operate without cutting skin. But when the ship's power systems failed under combat stress, these advanced tools became useless. Meanwhile, Dr. Ward's medical kit contained simple but effective supplies. Bandages, antiseptics, pain medication, and surgical tools that worked without power. When fancy technology failed, basic medical training and reliable equipment saved lives. Chief Engineer Ben Parker supervised repair operations throughout the ship. His teams worked with the methodical efficiency that came from years of maintaining equipment in harsh conditions. "Captain," he reported over the communication system, "all major systems are operational. We took some hits to the outer hull, but nothing that affects combat capability. The damage to the Defiance was surprisingly light, considering the intensity of the battle. Scorch marks from energy weapons covered parts of the hull, and several sections showed impact damage from enemy projectiles. But the ship's compartmentalized design had contained the damage effectively." "How long until we are fully operational?" Kane asked. 6 hours for complete repairs," Parker replied. "But we could fight again right now if needed." This was another advantage of human engineering that the aliens were beginning to understand. Their ships were built for maximum efficiency, with every system connected to every other system. When one part failed, it often brought down multiple other functions. The Defiance used older design principles. Each section could operate independently if needed. The weapon systems had their own power supplies. The life support ran on separate circuits from the engines. It was not as elegant as alien technology, but it was much more survivable. Navigator Julie Brooks worked at her station, plotting safe courses for the damaged Council ships. Many of them had lost their advanced navigation systems when their main computers were damaged by electromagnetic pulses from the nuclear explosions. "Captain," she reported, "the surviving alien vessels are having trouble with basic navigation. Their systems were not designed to operate in this much electromagnetic interference." "Can we help them?" Kane asked. "Already working on it," Brooks replied. "Our navigation computers use simple mathematical calculations instead of complex energy field mapping. I can plot courses for all of them." Lieutenant Amy Foster finished securing her weapons and began the task of inventory and replacement. The kinetic cannons had fired nearly 100 explosive shells. The railguns had used most of their solid ammunition. The nuclear missile supply was down to less than half. "Captain," she reported, "we used significant ammunition in the battle. We have enough left for one more major engagement, but then we will need to resupply." "Understood," Kane replied. "How do our weapons compare to the alien systems in terms of maintenance and reliability?" Foster considered the question carefully. "Ma'am, their energy weapons are certainly powerful when they work, but they require constant calibration and adjustment. Our kinetic systems just need ammunition and basic maintenance." Commander Ryan Davis monitored communications from across the galaxy as news of the battle spread. The reaction was immediate and intense. Every major species was demanding details about how the primitive human ship had achieved such an impossible victory. "Captain," he reported, "we are receiving communication requests from over 50 different governments and military organizations. Everyone wants to know how we did it." "And what are you telling them?" Kane asked. "The truth," Davis replied. "We used weapons that worked reliably under combat conditions against an enemy that had adapted to defend against energy attacks." The concept seemed difficult for many alien species to understand. They had spent centuries perfecting energy weapons that could destroy targets with clean precision. The idea of using crude explosives and metal projectiles seemed almost barbaric to them, but the results spoke for themselves. The Keth Armada, that had been immune to the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, had been completely destroyed by human kinetic systems. Admiral Jake Morrison reviewed the tactical recordings of the battle, analyzing what had worked and what could be improved. The engagement had proved several important points about human military doctrine. First, their weapons were effective against enemies that other forces could not damage. The adaptive armor that had made the Keth invincible was useless against physical impacts. Second, human ships could operate effectively in conditions that disabled more advanced vessels. The electromagnetic interference in the nebula had crippled alien systems while having no effect on mechanical weapons and simple computers. Third, the compartmentalized design of human ships made them much more survivable than the elegant but fragile alien vessels. "Captain," Morrison said during their tactical review, "we need to document these lessons for the rest of the human fleet. This battle has shown us advantages we did not know we had." Messages continued to arrive from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The news of their victory had reached Earth itself, where the human government was already preparing to expand their military shipbuilding programs. But perhaps the most significant communications came from alien governments that had previously dismissed human military capability. The Alterian Council requested immediate meetings to discuss military cooperation. The Nexus Federation offered to purchase human weapons designs. Even the proud Zalarian Empire sent diplomatic messages expressing interest in joint military exercises. "Look how quickly their attitudes have changed," observed Commander Davis. "Yesterday they were making jokes about our primitive technology. Today, they want to learn from us." "Success has a way of changing people's opinions," Captain Kane replied. "The question is whether we can maintain this advantage." Chief Parker had been thinking about that same question. He joined the bridge crew for their post-battle analysis, bringing practical engineering perspective to the discussion. "Captain, the aliens will try to copy our weapons," he said, "but I do not think they will succeed easily. Their entire industrial base is built around energy manipulation. They do not have the manufacturing capability to mass-produce kinetic weapons." "Explain," Admiral Morrison requested. "Making a plasma cannon requires exotic materials and precision energy control systems," Parker continued. "Making a kinetic cannon requires steel, explosives, and mechanical engineering. They have forgotten how to work with simple materials." This was an important insight. The galaxy's advanced civilizations had become so dependent on energy-based technology that they had lost the ability to work with basic materials and mechanical systems. Dr. Ward added her own observations from treating the alien wounded. "Their medical training focuses on using advanced equipment. When that equipment fails, many of their medics do not know how to perform basic first aid." The pattern was becoming clear. The alien civilizations had gained impressive technological capabilities, but they had lost the fundamental skills that made those technologies possible. When their advanced systems failed, they had no backup plans. "This gives us a significant strategic advantage," Admiral Morrison concluded. "But only if we maintain our own capabilities while learning from their strengths." Captain Kane nodded in agreement. The battle had taught them that human technology was not primitive. It was simply different, and in some situations, different was exactly what was needed to win. As the rescue operations continued around them, the crew of the USS Defiance began to understand that they had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The ship that had been mocked as a relic was now the most feared vessel in space. But they also knew that their real test would come when other enemies learned from the Keth defeat and developed new strategies to counter human weapons. The war was far from over. 2 days after the main battle, long-range sensors detected a massive object approaching through the outer edge of the Omega Nebula. The surviving Council ships were still conducting rescue operations when the new contact appeared on their screens. Commander. Ryan Davis studied the sensor readings with growing concern. Captain, this contact is enormous, much larger than anything we encountered in the Keth fleet. Captain Lisa Kane moved to the tactical display to examine the data herself. The approaching vessel dwarfed even the largest ships from the previous battle. It was easily 10 times the size of the USS Defiance and bristled with weapon systems. Identification? She asked. Unknown design, Davis replied. But the energy signatures match Keth technology. I think this is their Dreadnought-class command ship. Admiral Jake Morrison joined them at the tactical station. His weathered face showed no emotion as he studied the massive enemy vessel, but his eyes revealed the concern of an experienced commander. How many ships like this do they have? He asked. Intelligence reports suggest only one, Davis answered. This appears to be their absolute last resort, the flagship of their entire empire. The Keth Dreadnought was a weapon designed to destroy planets, not engage other ships in combat. Its main guns could crack the crust of worlds. Its armor was thick enough to survive the explosion of small suns. Most importantly, it carried enough firepower to sterilize entire solar systems. All Council ships, this is emergency alert! Came a panicked transmission from the damaged Zalarian cruiser. Massive enemy contact approaching. Recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel. But evacuation was not possible. Most of the surviving Council vessels were too damaged to travel at high speed. The rescue ships that had arrived were not equipped for combat. If the Keth Dreadnought reached them, it would complete the destruction that the first battle had started. Captain, Admiral, Morrison said quietly, we are the only combat-capable ship in this area. If we do not stop that dreadnought, everyone here will die. Captain Kane understood the situation perfectly. The USS Defiance, which had been mocked as primitive and outdated, was now the only thing standing between the Keth superweapon and the defenseless survivors. Chief Parker, she called down to engineering, I need maximum power to all systems. We are going to engage a target much larger than anything we have faced before. Ben Parker's voice came back immediately. You have it, Captain. But that thing is enormous. Our weapons might not be powerful enough to penetrate its armor. We will find a way, Kane replied with more confidence than she felt. Lieutenant Amy Foster began preparing her weapons for what might be an impossible fight. The kinetic cannons that had destroyed hundreds of smaller ships seemed inadequate against a target the size of a small moon. Captain, she reported, we still have 12 nuclear missiles remaining, but I do not know if even our most powerful warheads can damage something that large. Navigator Julie Brooks studied the tactical situation from her station. The dreadnought was approaching slowly, confident in its overwhelming superiority. It had probably expected to find the Keth fleet victorious and the Council ships destroyed. Captain, she said, the enemy ship is moving through the densest part of the nebula. The gas concentration there is extreme. Admiral Morrison caught the implication immediately. The electromagnetic interference will be at maximum levels. Their energy weapons will be even less effective than usual, but their armor will still be intact, Commander Davis pointed out. And they have enough kinetic weapons of their own to destroy us even without energy systems. Captain Kane made her decision. We cannot win a direct confrontation with a ship that size, but we do not have to destroy it completely. We just have to disable it long enough for the rescue ships to evacuate. She activated the ship's communication system to address the entire crew. This is the captain. We are about to engage an enemy, vessel much larger than our own. The odds are not in our favor, but we have advantages they do not expect. Stay focused, trust your training, and remember that everyone in this nebula is counting on us. The USS Defiance turned toward the approaching dreadnought with the determination of a warrior facing impossible odds. The human ship looked tiny compared to its enormous opponent, like a single fighter challenging a battleship. Distance to target decreasing, Davis reported. They have detected our approach and are adjusting course to intercept. The Keth dreadnought began to turn its massive bulk toward the human ship. Weapon ports along its hull opened like the mouths of hungry predators. This vessel had been designed to destroy entire fleets, not single ships. They are powering weapons, Foster announced, watching her sensor displays. Energy buildup detected, across multiple systems. Evasive maneuvers, Captain Kane ordered. Use the gas clouds for cover. Navigator Brooks sent the Defiance diving into the thickest part of the nebula, where the colorful gases swirled in dense patterns that confused enemy sensors. The human ship disappeared from sight like a submarine diving beneath the surface of an ocean. The dreadnought fired its massive energy cannons into the gas clouds, trying to flush out the smaller vessel. The beams turned entire sections of the nebula into plasma, creating artificial lightning storms that lit up space for millions of kilometers. But the USS Defiance was no longer where the enemy expected to find it. Brooks had plotted a course that used the gas currents themselves for concealment and movement. The human ship emerged from an entirely different cloud bank, much closer to the dreadnought than should have been possible. Target acquired, Foster announced. We are within range of their hull. All weapons, fire for effect, Captain Kane ordered. The USS Defiance unleashed everything it had. Nuclear missiles streaked toward the massive enemy ship, while kinetic cannons hammered at its armor plating. Railgun slugs struck at tremendous velocity, trying to find weak points in the dreadnought's defenses. The explosions were spectacular, but seemed to have little effect on the enormous target. The dreadnought's armor was simply too thick to be penetrated by conventional weapons. The nuclear warheads created bright flashes of light, but did not seem to damage the massive hull. Minimal damage to target, Davis reported with frustration. Their armor is absorbing everything we can throw at it. But Chief Parker had been watching the battle from engineering, and he had noticed something interesting about the enemy ship's design. Captain. His voice came over the communication system. That ship is too big for its own power systems. Look at the energy distribution patterns. Captain Kane studied the tactical display as Parker highlighted what he had observed. The dreadnought was indeed struggling to power all of its systems simultaneously. Its enormous size required tremendous amounts of energy just for basic operations. The reactor cores are concentrated in the center of the ship, Parker continued. If we could cause a power overload, the entire vessel might lose main power. How do we overload a reactor that size? Kane asked. With electromagnetic pulse weapons, Foster suggested. Our nuclear warheads can create massive EMP effects if we detonate them in the right location. Admiral Morrison understood the plan immediately. We need to get our missiles inside their hull, close to the reactor cores. The electromagnetic pulse from a nuclear explosion at close range might disrupt their power systems. That means getting close enough to use precise targeting, Commander Davis pointed out. They will pour everything they have into stopping us. "Then we better move fast," Captain Kane replied. The USS Defiance accelerated directly toward the massive dreadnought, its engines burning at maximum power. The human ship looked like a metal arrow aimed at the heart of a mountain. The Keth vessel responded with every weapon it could bring to bear. Energy beams, plasma cannons, and particle accelerators all fired at the approaching human ship. The volume of fire was overwhelming. "Hull damage on multiple decks," reported a damage control team, "but armor is holding." The Defiance continued its charge, absorbing punishment that would have vaporized any other ship. Its thick armor plating, designed for exactly this kind of assault, protected the crew and vital systems from the enemy barrage. "Entering point-blank range," Navigator Brooks announced. "Fire nuclear missiles, maximum yield, direct impact with." "The hull," Captain Kane ordered. The remaining nuclear warheads streaked across the short distance between ships and struck the dreadnought's armor at the closest possible range. The explosions were blinding, creating artificial suns that turned the entire nebula white with released energy. When the light faded, both ships hung motionless in space. The USS Defiance was battered and scorched, but still intact. The massive Keth dreadnought was dark and silent, its hull cracked but not broken. "Target appears to have lost main power," Davis reported with amazement. "All energy signatures are down to emergency levels. The electromagnetic pulse from the nuclear explosions had done exactly what Chief Parker had predicted. The massive ship's power systems, overwhelmed by the sudden energy surge, had shut down to prevent complete destruction of their reactor cores. Without power, the dreadnought was helpless. Its weapons could not fire. Its engines could not move. Most importantly, its life support systems could not sustain the crew for long. "This is the USS Defiance to the disabled Keth vessel," Captain Kane. 3 days later, rescue fleets from 12 different worlds arrived at the Omega Nebula. They found the USS Defiance floating among the wreckage of what had once been the most feared armada in the galaxy. The human ship was scarred and battered, but it flew the colors of victory. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck, watching as recovery teams worked to salvage what they could from the destroyed Keth vessels. The massive dreadnought hung powerless nearby, its crew evacuated to safety aboard rescue ships. Captain Lisa Kane joined him at the viewing window. Her uniform was stained with smoke and sweat from 3 days of continuous operations, but her eyes held the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. "Final casualty reports, Captain?" Morrison asked. 14 wounded, none killed," Kane replied. "Dr. Ward says everyone will make full recoveries. The Keth dreadnought crew lost 37 when their power systems failed, but we managed to save the rest." Morrison nodded approvingly. Even in victory, the human crew had worked to minimize casualties on both sides. It was a distinction that had not gone unnoticed by the alien observers. Commander Ryan Davis approached with a datapad full of communication requests. "Sir, we have messages from over 200 different organizations. Military commands, news, services, governments, and universities all want interviews." "What are they asking about?" Morrison inquired. "How we did it," Davis replied simply. "Everyone wants to understand how primitive human weapons defeated the most advanced fleet in known space." The answer was actually quite simple, though many alien analysts seemed to find it difficult to accept. Human weapons worked reliably under adverse conditions. Human engineering prioritized function over elegance. Human crews trained to fight, without depending on advanced technology. Chief Engineer Ben Parker emerged from the lower decks, his coveralls even more grease-stained than usual. He had spent the last 3 days keeping the ship operational with spare parts and determination. "Captain," he reported, "all major repairs are complete. We are ready for whatever comes next." "How long until we can return to full combat capability?" Kane asked. "We already are at full capability," Parker replied with pride. "That is the beauty of simple engineering. When something breaks, we fix it with tools that work." Lieutenant Amy Foster had finished restocking the ship's weapons from the supply vessels that had arrived with the rescue fleet. The kinetic cannons were loaded with fresh ammunition. The railguns had new projectiles. Most importantly, the missile tubes held a full complement of nuclear warheads. "Captain," she reported, "we are fully armed and ready, but I have been thinking about the battles we fought. Our weapons were effective because the enemy had never encountered them before. What happens when they adapt?" It was a good question. The Keth had developed adaptive armor to counter energy weapons. Other enemies would undoubtedly study the human tactics and develop countermeasures for kinetic attacks. Navigator Julie Brooks had been monitoring communications from across the galaxy, and her findings were both encouraging and concerning. "Captain," she said, 3 different species have announced crash programs to develop kinetic weapons based on our designs, but I am also detecting increased activity in several hostile sectors. Our victory has gotten everyone's attention." Admiral Morrison had expected this development. Military success always created new challenges as potential enemies sought to counter proven tactics. "The question," he said to the assembled officers, "is whether we can stay ahead of the competition. We have advantages they do not understand, but only if we keep developing new capabilities." Dr. Helen Ward joined the group, having finished treating the last of the wounded crew members. Her simple medical equipment had proved more reliable than the advanced systems on many alien ships, another example of practical human engineering. "Admiral," she said, "I have been talking to the medical staff from other ships. They are amazed that we suffered so few casualties in such intense combat. They want to understand our damage control procedures." "And what are you telling them?" Morrison asked. "The truth," Ward replied. "We build our ships to protect the crew first and worry about efficiency second. Compartmentalized design, redundant systems, and thick armor save lives when everything else fails." This was another lesson that the galaxy was beginning to learn from the human military. Advanced technology was impressive, but reliability and survivability were more important than elegance. A communication alert sounded from the bridge. Commander Davis checked the message, and his expression became serious. "Admiral," he announced, "we have a priority transmission from Earth Command. The President wants to address the crew personally." Morrison and Kane exchanged glances. Presidential. Communications to individual ships were extremely rare and usually meant either very good news or very bad news. They gathered on the bridge as the main screen activated to show the President of Earth sitting in her office. Behind her, the flags of all human colonies were displayed in a show of unity and strength. "Captain Kane, Admiral Morrison, and crew of the USS Defiance," she began, "you have brought honor to all of humanity. Your victory against impossible odds has changed how the galaxy views our species." She paused to look directly at the camera, her expression both proud and serious. "But more than that, you have proven something important about human values. You fought not just to win, but to protect others. You risked your lives for alien species that had mocked and dismissed you. That is what makes us human." The crew listened in respectful silence as their planet's leader continued. "Effective immediately, the USS Defiance is designated as the flagship of the new human defense fleet. Admiral Morrison, you will command our expanded military forces. Captain Kane, You will retain command of the Defiance while also serving as tactical advisor to the fleet. Morrison felt the weight of new responsibility settling on his shoulders. The human military had been small and underestimated before this battle. Now they would be expected to defend not just human colonies, but potentially the entire galaxy. Furthermore, the president continued, "The Galactic Council has voted to place human military forces in command of all multi-species defense operations. The galaxy has learned to respect human capabilities. The transmission ended with congratulations and promises of support from Earth. But the crew of the Defiance knew that their real challenges were just beginning." Lord Vex's voice came over. The communication system from his rescue ship. The Zalarian commander who had mocked human technology just days before now spoke with genuine respect and humility. "Captain Kane," he said, "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my life and the lives of thousands of others. Your primitive weapons, as I foolishly called them, have saved us all." "No apology needed, Lord Vex," Kane replied graciously. "We all learned valuable lessons from this battle." "Indeed we did," Vex agreed. "I have recommended to my government that we purchase human weapon designs and training programs. Our energy weapons are impressive, but your kinetic systems are simply more reliable." Similar requests were coming from across the galaxy. Species that had dismissed human technology were now eager to learn from it. The primitive weapons that had been mocked were now in demand. But Admiral Morrison knew that their real advantage was not the weapons themselves, but the philosophy behind them. Humans built things to work under the worst possible conditions. They trained to fight when advanced systems failed. They valued reliability over sophistication. "Captain," he said to Kane, "we need to be careful about sharing our technologies. Our advantage comes not just from kinetic weapons, but from the way we think about warfare." Kane nodded in understanding. Simple weapons in the hands of well-trained crews who understand their equipment. It is not something that can be easily copied. As the rescue operations continued around them, news of the battle spread throughout known space. The story grew with each telling, becoming legend even as the participants tried to maintain accurate records. The primitive human warship that had been mocked and dismissed had destroyed an entire armada. More importantly, it had saved the lives of thousands of beings from a dozen different species. But perhaps the most significant change was in how other species viewed humanity itself. No longer were humans seen as crude newcomers who relied on brute force. They were now recognized as warriors who combined practical engineering with tactical brilliance. 6 months later, shipyards throughout human space were operating at maximum capacity. Orders poured in from every corner of the galaxy for vessels built to human specifications. The USS Defiance design became the template for a new generation of warships that prioritized function over form. The crew of the original Defiance continued to serve together, their bonds forged stronger by shared victory. They had proven that in warfare, the most advanced technology did not always win. Sometimes the old ways were indeed the best ways. Admiral Morrison looked out at the stars and knew that humanity's real journey was just beginning. They had earned respect through victory, but now they had to prove worthy of the trust that had been placed in them. The galaxy had learned not to mock the outdated human warship. They had learned to respect the simple weapons and practical engineering that had accomplished what advanced technology could not.